Hey everybody, welcome to the Truth and Freedom Ministry channel. This is purely just to retain the viewership. Today is going to be the first part in a multi-part series I'm hoping to do on the tactical games. What is the tactical games? I recently competed in one. I competed in a skirmish, which is a single day event. It's more localized. It's more of an on-ramp into regional events where you're going to be competing for a full weekend, and those are fewer and far between. So I truthfully really wanted to understand more about the tactical games. The first event I've actually ever done was an NRL Hunter match. And on the surface, an NRL Hunter match and a tactical games match couldn't be further from each other. A tactical games match is going to be much more about lifting heavy stuff, shooting under duress. How do you perform when your grip strength is failing you, when you're gassed, when you're just hurting and you need to continue doing the set and keep going throughout the day? On the NRL Hunter front, that's going to be way more about engaging unknown targets at unknown distances. It's a lot more precision based. It's a lot more long distance based. So there's actually not a lot uncommon on the surface, but I think together makes for an interesting analysis. And it's one that I'm actually hoping to address in more detail, maybe at a later point in time, because I think there's just so much to go over here. I competed in this for a few reasons. One of them was I really wanted an assessment of my marksmanship ability under duress, very fatigued, when the fundamentals start to fall apart because you're gassed and you can't catch your breath, or you have to continue to lift heavy stuff. How does this all go and how does this shake out? Second, just on a physical fitness assessment, I really wanted to know how up to snuff am I for those physical challenges? Where am I finding my weak points at? How am I performing with those practical exercises? And then lastly, I really just wanted a better understanding of the competition games through actual participation. I think it's really easy to be just saying the thing that everyone tends to say, which is it's just CrossFit with guns, right? But I wanted to be able to put that to the test and have a greater understanding and not just take it for granted. I think if you're coming at things from a fitness side, you probably have a lot of interest in just understanding, hey, what does someone from a shooting perspective think of this and what's some stuff I could glean? If you're coming at it from the shooting side, where maybe you're more of a pure shooter who's only done stuff like USPSA, IDPA, DMR matches, PRS, NRL Hunter, you might be thinking, okay, well, maybe I've been overlooking some things here. Maybe there's something that's going to be valuable for me just as a well-rounded person, a well-rounded citizen, a well-rounded shooter. So I think this is going to be really enjoyable, and I hope you guys get a lot out of it. So in June of 2025, earlier this year, I attended my first regional match in Rupert, Idaho. I actually volunteered, so I was just there to be able to observe, and I was there to give a helping hand to make sure the match ran smoothly since it wasn't too far away from where I live. I think I learned quite a bit at that. A regional match is really a weekend-long event, and you see 10 to 15 of these spread out across a given year. They're from the West Coast to the East Coast, so you've seen them in Arizona, and I've seen them all the way out in New Hampshire. So there's a lot of opportunities to be able to compete in something like this. There's all sorts of divisions. There's intermediate, which is kind of where you start off at. There's tactical, there's elite, there's specialty divisions like men's 40, women's 40, men's 50 plus, women's 50 plus. There's even some teams type stuff. Typically, you're going to be seeing 7 to 8 types of stages over the course of a match. At Rupert, Idaho, there were 7 stages. 3 of them were fitness plus shooting stages, 2 of them were shooting only, and then 2 of them were fitness only. During this match, I actually got to run in and meet a couple folks who are involved in the skirmish series. Now, these folks actually host a skirmish that's the single day, more localized opportunity, and they have them over in Boise, Idaho. So I was able to kind of get in touch with them. A skirmish, like I mentioned, is also a little bit more affordable. It's a single day. It's usually anywhere from $100 to $150 compared to a regional match, which is going to be $400, plus the travel costs and whatever type of room and board you need to get if you're coming from out of the area. Skirmishes are also set up across the country. I think they're still trying to work themselves into becoming a bit more available. But from what I've seen skirmishes over in Boise. I've seen them in Florida. I've seen them in Minnesota, Ohio, Texas. So they are out there, and I would recommend checking them out. So I wanted to go over a few tips and tricks for success at your first match, or if you're just considering doing one. And I haven't seen this one touched on too much online, but you're looking at the first tip back there, which is a wagon. And it sounds silly, but when I showed up to Rupert to volunteer at that regional match, one of the first things I noticed was that like 50% of people competing were rocking these bad boys. And it immediately clicked to me like, oh, that makes a lot of sense, because The alternative to taking something like this is that you are wearing like a pack, or you have it spread out amongst a few people, or you're going back and forth to your car. And a lot of the time your stages throughout the day are pretty far from your vehicle. So when you get a wagon, and for instance, like I bought this one from Costco, it cost me like 99 bucks. This is really the only thing I purchased in preparation for the match. You can just load up everything in your car the night before, or load it all up in your wagon and then just put it in your car. I don't even have a truck. I put this in the truck bed of my SUV. I just put a seat down, rolled it in there, and then when I went to the skirmish that morning, I just pulled it out and I pretty much had everything that I needed. So with this type of event, you're going from stage to stage and there's a decent amount of downtime. So having all of this is pretty nice, because let's say you're doing a shooting and a fitness stage. Once you're done with that stage, you're gonna have, 30 minutes, an hour plus, and you can just take off your belt, take off your plate carrier, throw it over in the wagon, take your rifle, put it in there, all of that stuff, and it sort of frees you up just to be a little more comfortable. So tip number one, get yourself a wagon. One thing I would tell everybody, and this is a big tip, is do not leave with the kitchen sink on your equipment. I know there's going to be a temptation to just take everything that you got because you're just so stoked to be able to be using it because it's normally sitting in the closet. But trust me, this isn't the type of event that you want to just take everything, leave it all on because I train how I fight, brother. I really do think that less is more in this game, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of external factors and you're going to be hurting during a lot of the stages, because most of them are going to involve fitness of some type. So I know, like, let's say on the rifle here, it's really tempting for someone to be able to have, a can, right? They're going to have a flashlight. They might have a laser unit. They might have backup sights. They're going to have their own primary system. They're going to have a secondary system. Hell, they're probably going to have a bipod on there because SPRs are so hot right now. But trust me, anything that you can strip off is going to be a value add, right? So I had to look at this and decide, okay, well, what do I want to remove? Now, I didn't honestly take off too much. I just had a laser unit on here that I'm evaluating. It's that HFXC, but it's not going to be any value added for this match. If anything, I don't even know if a secondary system like a laser is allowed. So I pulled that off. I normally do kind of have a bipod on here. There's no reason to. I don't even think bipods are allowed in the competition. So that went off too. Plate carrier, right? It's going to be so easy to want to be able to be like, bro, I got my plate carrier, kit it out. I'm just going to wear everything on it and I'm going to just gut it out. I'm going to see how I perform because I'm a grunt like that. But really, like, you need 15 pounds. That's what the criteria is for this. So take off your placard. Most people are running a placard of some kind. You're going to probably already have a belt system on you, right? So most mags you're going to be able to carry, you can keep on body on your belt. So a lot of the times this placard is just going to be a snag hazard during all of the events. I have some side stuff, right? I have like an elastic side pouch. If I really need to keep an extra magazine, I can put it there. So I took that off on this. I usually keep side plates in here, just soft armor 3A, but there was no reason to keep them in there. I kept the pouches on just because I didn't really need to take those off, but there's no reason for me to do that because it's just going to hinder my mobility and it's going to add extra weight. A lot of people are running back panels, right? Maybe people do the zip-on style or the Haley flat pack, or they're just running some sort of pack, because when I need my water or I need my snacks or I need to pull out the smokes, how am I going to do that without my buddy system and the pack on my back? But you don't need this for this, so take it off. Clothing, right? You're noticing that I'm wearing shorts, a t-shirt, I'm wearing a watch, be able to keep track of the time. I had knee sleeves on during the match. That was just in case I needed to go on my knees, which I did a lot, or you have to go in the prone or you're crawling around. You want to have something to be able to kind of take an impact there. And they do add some compression, which is kind of nice. So knee pads, I would recommend those. But as far as clothing, this isn't really the time to go full Captain Commando and just be like, I need to wear my Cry combat shirt. I need to wear my Cry pants. I just want to look good out there. Really, you should probably look just more like someone who's going to be, doing a half marathon or something and just throw on the other minimum stuff. When I was at Rupert, the thing that I saw was that the people that were really kitted out, and their rifles were super kitted out, which I'm honestly even like a victim to this, because I think this is probably a nicer setup than a lot of people were running at Rupert outside of the men's elite, which I am certainly not. I would be crushed by those guys. But the more that people were bringing everything in the kitchen sink, I tend to see that they were trying to compensate for a lack of fitness. And usually those guys were gassed, and a lot of the times they weren't even finishing a stage. So take that what you will. The people that I saw that had the things in common where they were finishing stages, I don't know what their hits looked like, but they didn't look like they were sheer death at the end of the stage. Were generally just wearing comfortable clothes, right? They had a good pair of shoes and socks. They were wearing some athletic shorts. You know, maybe they had some pants if they needed to do some internal kneecap type stuff. But overall, they were dressed to be able to be mobile, to be able to be comfortable throughout a 2-day event. So I would really recommend, don't overdo it on the gear. You want to make sure that you have good stuff, but at the same time, you don't need to use this as a LARP opportunity. What I typically see is people that don't get to go out a ton, or they're not training often, use an opportunity where they finally signed up for a match, or they finally signed up to do some training, to be able to like take everything out. Like finally, it's leaving the safe. Like when you start to actually get out and do stuff more, it doesn't become, I need to use everything all at once because I don't know when I'm going to get to do this opportunity again. So just try to scale back, take the minimum. It's actually going to probably help you in your performance, and doing the alternative is most likely going to hinder your performance. So don't want to be a harsh critic, but that is a big piece of advice I would recommend. Okay, so another tip that I want to go over is ear protection. I know that sounds like what's there to really talk about when it comes to ear protection, but you basically have two options, right? You have in-ear and you have over-ear protection. And I brought these Surefire in-ear protection, and I also brought a pair of Comtacs, which are your, really nice Gucci over-ear protection. And I wanted to give some feedback that I really do think the way to go is with in-ear protection. And maybe I'm just the clueless one, but I realize there's a few things when it comes to over-ear protection, and that's why it's a good choice to probably avoid in something like this. Is one, it's a really physical activity. So you're going to be sweating a lot. And when you're wearing over-the-ear protection, this all just becomes really soupy and messy, especially when you're having like the gel cups. I would stay away from that because this is a lot more breathable. Another thing is that you're moving around, you're having to pick stuff up, go under obstacles, roll over obstacles, and the likelihood that your ear pro is going to be able to get pushed back completely or partially and you're going to have your ears exposed is pretty high. So doing this, while you might have to do some adjustments just during a stage, it's less likely to get pushed off your ears. And then lastly, I would say that because nobody is allowed to use muzzle brakes from what I can tell, as well as the fact that a lot of people are shooting suppressed and you're outside, the decibel level isn't going to be as severe as compared to when you're shooting indoors or anything like that. So generally, this is going to do you pretty well. I'm out here way too late, but I know there's already going to be a million questions about gear because everybody always wants to know about gear. So I'll do a brief rundown. I'll probably save more of this for another video as far as if you really want to go into the tism of what I was using. Some quick tips and tricks. So a red dot on a pistol is really, really going to help you. I know a lot of people have migrated to this in the shooting community, and even probably people that are already competing in the tactical games. Most people at the regional matches were already running one of these. You're going to be at a disadvantage if you're not using one of these. So I would say try to be able to save up for one if you need, or if you don't already have one, but this really did come in handy. As far as the rifle goes, I used a suppressor. For me personally, this gun groups tighter with a can on it. And for me, that was enough of a trade-off for me to say, I really do want to run this. The can also doesn't add that much weight to the system. It also is just going to be softer shooting, and I'm going to enjoy the experience more. So I ran a can. I would say get a good suppressor cover for it because you're doing a lot more movement than you might normally be doing. And so this is going to help avoid burning yourself, burning anyone else, burning your lovely little wagon, and it's just going to reduce mirage. At the event, the LPVO is still king. That's what I see most people running. But I actually did pay attention to like what the elite competitors were using. And a lot of those guys were running 2 to 10, 2 to 12, 3.6 to 18 Mark V HD type systems. And they were usually going with an offset red dot. So for me, I felt really good about taking this to the match because I do think that that's the direction that the games are headed, because they're starting to push out towards distance, and really having this type of magnification is nice, because when you're shooting on paper, you can get some confirmation that you're actually grouping where you want to early on when you're starting off a stage. I went with the piggyback dot. That's just how I run things, and it did come useful for a lot of the shooting only type stages at this skirmish that I attended. You're probably wondering like, hey, why'd you take an SPR to this? But I subscribe to the ridgeline defense type of philosophy that an SPR is meant to be ran hard and fast. And so this is a semi-auto platform. Use it to your advantage. Take fast shots, see what it's capable of. You know, this is going to be way more valuable in the long run than just treating it like a safe queen. And I use this as my primary system, and this is what I'm going to be taking to precision gas gun matches, DMR matches. So for me, running this at the tactical games was a pretty important step. At the same time, I had to think about ammo. I have this zeroed with 77 grain AAC ammunition. I'm at a limited supply of that. So what I needed to do was I took that and I shot at the paper or long range type stages at the skirmish, which I think the longest range was only like 90 yards out. But I shot AAC with that because that's what this is zeroed for. And anything that was 20 meters and in, or let's say I was shooting on steel and I knew I had a bigger, more generous type of target size, I shot PMC 55 grain because I knew my deviation wasn't going to be that far off. That seemed to work pretty well. Granted, like, I'm not a perfect shooter. I'm pretty slow at times and I need to kind of push my speed, but it worked for me. I've kind of touched on this already, but as far as how I was able to just wear athletic shorts, I am using the T-Rex Arms speed belt. Now, hopefully y'all can see it, but I'm wearing the T-Rex Arms speed belt. And how I was able to get away with this is, like, athletic shorts don't normally have buckles, right? So what I have is a padded rubberized inner belt, and that allows me to just be able to kind of hug, you know, your nylon-ish type, you know, elastic material clothing. And I think the thigh strap also helps just keep good retention. I was able to jump around, move around, and there was no issues doing something like this. Guys, as far as food and drinks is concerned, it's really not rocket science. Make sure you bring a lot of water. Make sure you bring like electrolytes or something that has salt. So liquid IVs are pretty popular nowadays. There's going to be a lot of opportunities for like energy drinks at these types of events. I'm a big White Monster fan, but at the same time, it's probably not the best call for this type of event. They kind of have a lot of caffeine, so they could lead to dehydration. You might even just get nauseous if you drink one and then you have to go do a stage where you're getting gassed and all that stuff coming up, right? So I would probably stay away from that. If you're a caffeine addict, get some coffee in the day before you do start. I wouldn't recommend just going in cold turkey with nothing. So get a baseline, but probably stay away from, you know, the bangs and all that other stuff. For food, I think at the regional events, there's a lot of food trucks, so you can really, you know, buy stuff from there. But I would recommend bringing in stuff to save some money since these matches are already expensive. At the skirmish I attended, they catered lunch, which was very kind, but you're on your own for snacks. So, you know, bring, you know, protein bars, beef jerky, you know, nuts, all that good stuff. All right, guys, so one interesting thing I wanted to talk about that I think is not likely to happen to you, but it is nonetheless noteworthy, is that the first stage that I actually competed at the tactical game skirmish that I was involved in was just under a 1 mile run. And it involved just wearing your athletic clothes. You know, you didn't have a gun belt, you didn't have your plate carrier on you, but you did need to have your rifle on you for the duration of the run. So what I did was I actually adjusted my sling and made it more of like a bow and arrow style, and I threw it on my back muzzle up. And so I was able to do that run. I actually had a pretty good time compared to the rest of the pack, which I was sort of surprised in. And so everything went well with that. On the next stage, that was a fitness and shooting stage. It was called Steinbeck is what I think the match director called it. And so part of that is when you are going to do the stage, you prep. So you get to the firing line, you set your rifle down on like a wood box, and at least a lot of the times you do that. And while you're doing all of your setup, you get to be able to get a sight picture of the paper target that you're going to be shooting at. You're able to kind of set your magnification level, make sure your red dot, if you're using one, is at good brightness. Just generally get comfortable so you can kind of stage plan for when you start the course. And when I actually was doing that second stage, I brought my rifle up and the entire magnification range and my sight picture was blurry. No matter if I was on 2 power or I was on 12 power, I found that it was blurry the entire time. If I changed my parallax from minimum to maximum magnification or minimum to maximum parallax, that still didn't do anything for me. So I was starting to have a mini panic attack because I'm like, my rifle and my optic just crapped out on me before the day even started. So I was trying to figure out, did it break because I was just rolling it around in the wagon that I was talking so highly about? Or did it break just because when I was going on my run, it was just getting shook up too much? Is it just the vibration, loosened something up and the whole system failed? But it actually turned out that while I was going on my run, what I think most likely happened was it unlocked my ocular focus. And so my ocular focus was starting to spin. And so it ended up being like a prescription set for someone elderly, probably 80-year-old, right? Like it was that bad and that misaligned with my vision. So I say all of this because you're going to have some stuff that goes wrong during a match, right? This one was easily diagnosable and fixable, and it didn't cause me any trouble over the rest of the entire day. I actually had no equipment issues over the course of the entire day too, which I was really happy about. But I say all of that because you probably should spend some time with your gear and making sure it's shook down properly. This entire competition series is one big shakedown. And so throw all of your kit on and do 15 minutes of burpees and make sure that nothing's falling apart. I had to tape up some of my malice clips on my mag pouches because they were starting to shake loose, right? I did that and I found that out in my garage instead of unfortunately finding out during the match. Go on a run with your plate carrier, see if there's any hot spots or anything you can do differently. Put all new batteries in your stuff, make sure that there's no failures or things that you can avoid. Do it before the match instead of finding out during the match. All right, everybody, time to close this one out. I don't per se have a verse of the video, but I did want to leave some closing remarks and talk about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And so one of the things that I've been really thinking about is how our culture prioritizes intellectual ability, emotional intelligence, all of these things within the Christian space. There's really a criminal overlook when it comes to the physical component, the health of someone, and how you can be effective for the Lord in that. Sometimes people that don't know Jesus have no real interest in meeting someone in an intellectual debate or just having a shoulder to cry on. I think sometimes there is value in having strong, effective, capable people that just straight up love Jesus, and people being like, I want to know more about what that person is all about. I want to know why they do the things that they do. There's a lot of power in being able to have a healthy mind and a healthy body, right? You kind of take notice when someone is trying to live a life in a different way and they're thriving during it, right? And so I think taking just care of your physical body is such a interesting thing that you can do for the Lord. We're called to do that. We're called to treat our bodies as temples, and everyone throws that in your face for some agenda. I'm not trying to do that and try to make a pitch that you shouldn't drink alcohol or you got to be vegan or whatever the heck you want to do. But I'm just trying to say that I do think there's a connection to being a witness for Christ and taking care of yourself. Not just here and not just here, but here, bro.